What does it take to really shape creative industries, and what does it really take to shape creative ambitions of founders? Globally, gaming is very mainstream. Global gaming is about a $250-300 billion market. It's bigger than box office, bigger than Hollywood, it's bigger than sports media rights, it's bigger than television media, it's bigger than OTT, bigger than music. And that has happened across the world, whether it's Korea, whether it's Japan, whether it's China, US. India could not have been immune to that trend, right? So it was only a matter of time where the Indian industry would catch up. 5 years back, the average revenue per paying user in India for gaming was $2. In 2018, 2019, today it's $22. The fastest growing slice of monetization is actually in-app purchases. Yes, to a large extent with AI, weak content will get commoditized. Yeah, it's said that if you want to see what innovation will look like in 5 years, see what's happening in the gaming industry today.
Hello and welcome to the Escape Velocity podcast by Outlook Business, where we talk to the movers, shakers, thinkers and doers of the tech and startup ecosystem. Today we have with us Salone Sehgal, founder and general partner of Lumikai, a gaming and interactive media venture capital firm based out of Gurgaon. Welcome Salone to the Escape Velocity podcast. You had a dream career in London. You were an investment banker there, a founder and then a VC. And I think around 2019, you decided to come back to India and start Lumikai. So it would be great to understand a bit about your journey. What prompted you to come back? What was the situation then?
It was, I get asked this question often. And actually, there was a very big personal compulsion alongside the professional need. I think professionally, I've been in interactive media and gaming now for about 2 decades, and I've seen the industry from all sides of the table. I've been a VC, I've been an entrepreneur, but I've also been in investment banking and private equity. And, there was always this deep-seated desire to see and build and learn to kind of, what does it take to really shape creative industries, and what does it really take to shape, let's say, creative ambitions of founders. And I spent a lot of time in Europe doing that, right? I think, if you were to look at it statistically, I shouldn't even be here, because I started my career in investment banking and private equity. It was a completely male-dominated environment. Then I became an entrepreneur, also in the interactive media and gaming industry. Again, I saw nobody like me building in that industry. And, I used to play games as a kid. And so I always used to think if I wanted to see a brown female Indian protagonist in a game, I'd probably have to build it myself. Later on, I realized I'd probably have to fund it myself as well. So I ended up joining a venture fund. But no, all jokes aside, I think, there was this perfect inflection point that came together for a move to India. Back in 2019, when I was at a UK-based venture fund, and that was the world's first interactive media and gaming VC fund, there was a lot of deal flow that started to come from India. And India at that point of time had gone through what I call the geofication of the internet. Smartphones had become very cheap. Internet was dirt cheap. And of course, 50% of India's smartphone population is under 25. And that further meant that there was just a lot of companies which started building in gaming and interactive media back in 2019. So it felt like it was the right time to come back to India to build a sector-focused strategy, simply because, I'd been in the industry for so long. I'd seen the inflection points in markets like China, markets like Turkey, markets like Israel, had a very large global strategic network as well. And there was a curiosity about the India market. So, being first to the market is always hard. A lot about the market was unknown globally. There were a lot of questions about us, whether there would be enough depth in the market for founders, whether this market would actually provide enough liquidity, whether the sector in itself is VC backable. And, I'd say that was a big leap of faith that was taken. And, the word Lumikai is actually a combination of 2 words. It's the Latin word for light and the Japanese word for tribe. Mm-hmm. So the intention was to illuminate a path for the next generation of founders, but also even for us. We were laying the road and to be a lighthouse fund in this sector. And there was a lot of, audacity, a lot of, risk-taking there. to some extent luck as well. And luck, I think I'd kind of say, we launched a debut fund in the middle of a pandemic. So I can't say we were very lucky. But at the same time, gaming adoption, interactive media adoption really went through the roof in India. And, since then, it's been 5 years. We are looking at targeting about investing $100 million in the India market. We've backed about 17 companies. We've seen north of 2,500 companies in the ecosystem. We have near 100% market coverage. So in some sense, as a fund, we have been tested and battle tested. We've seen a pandemic. We've seen a private market crash. We've seen a fundraising winter. We're now seeing war. So for a young fund, it's been a tumultuous journey. But I guess, that's what a founder's journey is like. So we're very much like the founders we back as a fund. But that's kind of the story in a nutshell.
So when you started Lumikai, India did not have a lot of sector-specific VC fund.
That's right.
Most of the funds, at that time, Sequoia, Lightspeed, Axel, they invested, across sectors.
Yeah.
So would be great to understand what was your pitch like to LPs. It must have been difficult. How did you convince them? And then there was also the pandemic around that.
Yes, of course.
So how did you go about it?
Yeah, it was very hard. And I think what was the template in a nutshell was essentially, if you see any market, any venture market, when it reaches a level of maturity, right, there is the first evolution is there will be horizontal funds, right? Because there is not enough depth or breadth there is enough breadth, but there's not enough depth in the market, and hence it yields a lot of horizontal funds. Now, if you look at the first wave of the internet in India, a lot of things needed to be built in terms of digital infrastructure. First, you had to get, e-commerce, you had to get travel, you had to get fintech, and get all of that layers built before, one can start thinking of, let's say, actual vertical strategies. And if you've seen that in, let's say, the US market or even in the China market, where countries have been through one or two cycles of venture funds, it has often led that the next level of venture investing is often sector specialist and sector specialization, which is required, right? And I think we got the timing of the sector specialization in a way which coincided with just user adoption. Had I launched Lumikai in 2015, it would have probably been too early because the digital infrastructure did not exist, right? Data was still expensive, smartphones weren't powerful enough, and also, of course, monetization was a question mark. I think a lot of that got solved in 2020. Monetization also got solved, right, with the advent of UPI. So a lot of things have to come in place for a strategy to work. And in that sense, 2020 was a confluence and a perfect storm of at least the macro factors coming into place. But of course, as a first-time fund manager in a market which is untested, in a industry which is unproven, and with founders who have been underserved, for us, we literally had to create everything from scratch, which meant educating global investors about the market, which also meant mapping the market, which is why we do our own proprietary research report. It's been something that we've been doing for the last 4 years, simply because there was nobody mapping the market prior to us. Nobody had actually put down the numbers to how big the market opportunity is. What is the market size? What is the revenue for this market? We did that effort. It's 6 months of our effort, but we do it because we not only wanted to educate our investors, but we also wanted to educate the ecosystem about the opportunity that we were seeing. Further, we also wanted to provide comfort to founders that if you are going to take this off the beaten path route of building in a creative industry like interactive media, like gaming, like entertainment, which has so far been underserved, and there has been little capital and little conviction which has gone into it, then we're here for you. And so all of that effort needed to be put in. Raising capital was, of course, a big challenge because we were raising in 2020. There were no road shows possible. All our capital was raised on Zoom, with me doing Zoom calls after Zoom calls with investors. And we raised the first fund in the middle of a pandemic. We're raising the second fund in the middle of a fundraising winter. We're just about to closing our second fund. It's wartime at the moment. So I like to joke that the next time we launch a fund, you should definitely short the market because we're probably never going to get our market timing right. But in the long run, I think the industry has been kind. We've been able to back some really spectacular companies which are now showing real strengths of becoming category leaders. I think what's more interesting is that, we come in super early. We're pre-seed investors, and more than 80% of our early stage bets are revenue generating. So they think monetization first. And that is actually tells us that the strategy works, because now, whether it's ad-based monetization, whether it's in-app purchases, whether it's virtual gifting and tipping, whether it's subscriptions, all of those monetization possibilities are existing in the market. So, the myth that was that India is just a Dow farm, Indians will never pay, all of that has now, been settled in terms of the traction that we see within the portfolio.
You said that, when you were raising the first fund, talking to global investors, because we have seen that in India, whenever you start a micro VC or the first fund when you raise it, it is generally backed by the family offices, HNIs. So in your case, was it different? Could you kind of get global LPs to buy this story at the outset? How was it like?
Actually, our case was actually exactly that. 100% of our capital, at least in the first fund, was global. And in the second fund, due to all the efforts that we'd put into the industry in terms of evangelizing the industry, working with policymakers, publishing our research report. Our research report gets quoted by the government, by the think tanks, by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. It's been used by the World Economic Forum, and that has helped to also educate the domestic industry, as a result of which we have some leading family offices now in the fund. But actually 80% of our capital came from global strategic institutions as well as financial capital. But that's largely because of, I've been in the sector for nearly 2 decades. So a lot of the investors have obviously, I have known...
You're betting on your resume.
Yes, for a very long period of time, simply because, this is all I knew, this is all I understood. And these were investors in previous fund, or investors who'd worked with me or seen me during my entrepreneurial ventures, and or corporates that I'd worked with or advised during my investment banking private equity days, as a result of which it allowed that kind of global network for me to reach out to that global network to say, hey, I'm doing this, and we're going to launch this strategy for India. And they were kind enough to support on this journey.
You've recently said at a public forum that in India the gaming industry has now topped the movie industry.
That's right.
And now you just said that catchphrase that India is just a Dow farm. Mm-hmm. Now it's no more true.
Yes.
So how can you kind of weave these two together and double click a bit?
Yeah.
And what has happened?
Sure. Globally, gaming is very mainstream, right? Global gaming is about a $250-300 billion market. It's bigger than box office. It's so bigger than Hollywood. It's bigger than sports media rights. It's bigger than television media. It's bigger than OTT. Bigger than music, and that has happened across the world. It's whether it's Korea, whether it's Japan, whether it's China, it's US. India could not have been immune to that trend. Right, so it was only a matter of time where the Indian industry would catch up. And if you were to just look at how we shape the media entertainment pie, how does it break up, right, in India? It's about a $25 billion bucket. Half of it is linear media. It's television, it's box office, it's print, it's out of home media. The other half, which is about 12 billion or so, is gaming. It's animation, VFX, it's digital media, it includes streaming, video streaming, audio streaming, social entertainment streaming, and esports. That's growing at a 16% year on year. It's expected to be a $30 billion market in the next 5 years. Gaming out of that is a $3.8 billion market. It's 3 times as big as Bollywood, and it's actually also exceeded cricket revenues.
Wow.
This year. So that global trend is actually happening in India as well. Right, and largely predicated by 4 key factors. You've got a 800 million smartphone user base. An average Indian consumes about 31 gigabytes of data a month. 50% of India's population is under 25. 5 years back, they were not in the workforce. Today, they are. And lastly is UPI, right, where microtransactions have become possible. So what credit cards and debit cards could not do for monetization, UPI has done it, right? Because the average first-time gamer spends about 29 rupees for their first purchase. Right, so it's as little as that, and this is because we do extensive research. We work with knowledge partners like Google, like Deloitte, and we, do a lot of data analysis, and this is what we actually discovered. So if your first-time transaction is that low, and you have a UPI mechanism which is very seamless, it's very frictionless, and monetization in entertainment is always impulse-led. It's not intent-led, right? That has unlocked, as a result of which that entire willingness to pay has now started to show up in actual numbers.
You said 29 rupees is the first transaction.
Yes.
And what is the average that people spend in a year or maybe a month?
I mean, that's data that we know, that about 5 years back, the average revenue per paying user in India for gaming was $2 in 2018, 2019. Today it's $22. So it has grown, if you can say it, more than 10x, right? In the last just 3-4 years. So these trends are very, very real. And it is not a urban phenomena, or it is not a male phenomena only. We were at Waves last week, where we launched our consumer research report, and it's called From Swipes to Stories. It's on our website if somebody wants to download it. But what was most interesting was that 66% of gamers come from non-metro cities, from tier 2, tier 3 cities. So this is a pan-India phenomenon. It's from Patna to Pune, from Guwahati to Gurgaon, right? Like, we surveyed nearly 3,000 smartphone users, and 45% of gamers are actually women. And we're seeing that age demographic, it's not young boys playing this or doing this, it's 18 to 30. If nearly 40% of the user base is 18 to 30, about 28% is more than 30 years old. So this is an older user base with disposable income who is actively choosing their phone as their primary mode of entertainment.
But what does gaming include? Because there is something like esports. Esports, does it fall under gaming, or is it different? Can you explain a bit about the different buckets that...
Yeah, sure. So as a fund, we look at what we call interactive media, right? Interactive media for us, and we invest across 5 key pillars. We invest in gaming, we invest in content, which is essentially gaming companies building games. Studios, right? It could be games, studios building games for the global markets. It also could be studios building games for India. We back platforms, so which is essentially, discrete audiences coming together for certain experiences. It could be game streaming, it could be audio entertainment, it could be social entertainment. Those are platform plays where it brings audiences together. We also invest in tools, tech, infrastructure, which is the underlying infrastructure layer for powering these experiences. We also invest in companies which are using applied game mechanics, right? Which could be, let's say, AI tutors and companions in a gamified way to improve education. We've recently backed a spiritual tech company which is building AI avatars for gurus and for astrologers.
Wow.
And so that you have an AI companion who is a guru, and they are actually translating Vedic text into LLMs and creating their wrappers around it to be able to provide that to their users. So this is essentially wherever it is interactive, immersive, and personalized, that constitutes interactive media for us. Because, we have a generation that we call internally the swipe before type generation, right? This is a generation which has learnt everything on their mobile phone, right? And they have been exposed to everything from social media to video to audio to gaming all at the same time. So that is the generation for which experiences have to be built in the future. And that falls within the mandate of what we call interactive media.
The division that you defined at the outset, $25 billion, of which half is linear media and the other half is this interactive. Yeah. So your kind of TAM is that entire 12.5, and it's not just the $3.5 billion of
That's
gaming.
Right.
Got it. And so understand this $3.5 billion of gaming. Is it mostly fantasy? Because like you said, that everybody is doing like transaction, 29 rupees is the first transaction. We see instances whenever IPL starts around that time, that UPI goes down because so many people are doing transactions. So can you kind of shine a light on that?
Yeah. So, out of the $12.5 billion, about $2 billion is real money gaming. But I think the most interesting aspect of that is that the fastest growing slice of monetization is actually in-app purchases. In-app purchases or microtransactions are actually growing at 46% year on year. And, over the course of the next 4 years, we expect that to be a nearly $4 billion market in itself. I think what's more interesting was that real money gaming, if you look at the evolution of any market, especially if you make a comparison to China, it was the first experience that the user had with making digital payments for, let's say, pure play entertainment, right? It trained an entire generation to make digital transactions. When we undertook our research last year, we discovered that 66% of gamers who pay in real money gaming apps are actually also now paying for mid-core games.
Okay.
So there's a very high degree of overlap. 61% of gamers who are paying for fantasy games are also starting playing for mid-core games or casual games.
What are mid-core games and casual?
Like a Battlegrounds Mobile India or a Clash of Clans, right? So they are actually starting to make that transition and journey into paying in other ways, like in-app purchases. So yes, real money gaming is a revenue pillar, but it is not the foundation, right? And that is the way to think about it. It is the evolution of the player, if you were to say, where they started with real money gaming, but clearly we can see, casual game revenue in India, for example, last year exceeded download revenue. It's the first time that it's happened, right? We see mid-core games like Battlegrounds Mobile India, like a Clash of Clans, like a EA FC Mobile. Their revenues have grown 50% year on year over the last year. So we're seeing that kind of transition happen already, where gamers are saying, "Hey, I'd like to experience other kind of entertainment as well on my mobile phone." We also now see the rise of subscription revenue. We see the rise of virtual gifting and tipping, right? We have a company called Elo, which has, just recently raised its pre-series B. It's now on a $23 million run rate, nearly 100 million users on their platform, and they monetize via in-app purchases and virtual gifting and tipping completely. Now, this was behavior which was really unthinkable a couple of years back, but now it is available. And if we were to see, let's say, other platforms, even if it's audio platforms, we're seeing that kind of monetization happen in India.
So real money gaming is like when you do a transaction, bet on something, create a team, right?
That's fantasy.
That's fantasy.
Yes.
And then there is the subscription model, which is maybe you'll play for a month.
Yeah, there is free-to-play games, which are monetized, where it's free-to-play, but there are certain items that you can buy within the gameplay, which may or may not give you gameplay benefit. It could just be a vanity item which makes your avatar look better, so which is a skin, or it could be an item which gives you gameplay benefit, like it helps you, skip a level, for example, or it helps in progression. That's a free-to-play game. Then, of course, there are subscriptions also. It could be a battle pass, for example. And then there are models like virtual gifting or tipping, which are typically used in social streaming platforms. So there are now very novel business models that are available. So I'll break it down and make it a little simple, right? Like, for example, if you think of a D2C company or an e-commerce company, right? A user comes to the platform, and if they make a purchase, that is a user where the CAC of the user or the customer acquisition cost has actually resulted in actually some return for the company, right? But if they come browse the platform and they leave, there is no way for that company to really monetize that user, right? In the case of an entertainment or a gaming platform, that's not the case. Like, if a consumer lands on let's say a game, you can monetize that user via eyeballs through ads. You can do in-app purchases. You can do subscription revenue. Or if it's a entertainment platform, you can also do virtual gifting and tipping, where the user chooses to provide a tip or a gift to the creator who's on that platform. So there are multiple avenues in an entertainment platform to be able to monetize a user, which doesn't exist in, let's say, just a regular consumer.
And what are the different kind of, is there a bracketing of this revenue, how much is, what percentage of the total revenues are subscription revenues, what percentage is ad?
Yeah, so I'd say majority of the revenue is right now out of this $12.5 billion bucket is ads revenue, because digital media is being monetized a lot via ads. So it could be your social, your streaming, your OTT platforms, etc. But of course there is subscription revenue which is rising as well, and in-app purchase revenue is now emerging in gaming right now, right? So that is that pie of it is also starting to increase. So out of the 12.5 billion, 1.6 billion is just in-app purchases on gaming alone. Right, and that's expected to grow to 4.4 billion in the next 4 years. So that in itself is a very powerful indicator of growth, because it's growing at a compounded annual growth rate of 40% year on year.
And that is more like also it's like how we imagine Web3 to be, right?
Web3 is different in that sense. Web3 is quite different from this, because this is, it's peer-to-peer or peer-to-merchant, right? Web3 is different in terms because there is, currency, different kind of a currency involved. You have different tokens, etc. So Web3 is a little bit, and it also uses blockchain, which is very different, and also a lot more friction.
Got it. So this $4 billion in the next 4 years, this $4 billion bucket of in-app purchases. So what are the games where these kind of things happen? So is it like those games like Clash of Clans?
Yes, that's right.
Which we don't make in India mostly, right? So I don't understand that. Are we doing that in India? Is it starting to happen?
That's exactly what, as a fund, we exist for, and that's exactly what we want to back in India. We currently import content in a way. So I would make the analogy, like if you think about it, in the 1990s, right, we had Doordarshan, so we used to only watch state television, right? Then satellite happened. A lot of American television got beamed into our homes, so a lot of us grew up watching Beverly Hills and Bold and the Beautiful and Santa Barbara, right? But it took about 6-7 years for the domestic production houses to come up, right? The SL, the Balajis, the Z's, right? And that's when we started getting a lot more massy television, which was mass market, like Hum Panch and etc. And all those kind of shows came out, right? We're currently in that transition, right? Like where if you were to think about it, gaming, interactive entertainment, etc., it's just about a 4-year-old industry, right? In its institutional journey. It's still very nascent. It is taking time for the domestic production houses to come up and studios to come up. But we've backed quite a few of these companies who are building for the India market, but also building from India for the global market as well. And they're leveraging, whether it's Indian storytelling or whether it's building, let's say, a cricket game for India, they're leveraging uniquely Indian stories to be able to translate them into entertainment experiences, right? Which is built for India, from India. So it does take some time. And so far, I guess developers, entrepreneurs have been, cash strapped. There's not been a lot of conviction or not of expertise in evaluating founders. It's not, founders have not had access to best-in-class knowledge, and all of that in the last 4-5 years has changed. When we invest, we often also co-invest with our global LP base. Our investor base are some of the world's largest global media companies, gaming companies from Japan, from South Korea, from US, Europe. So they bring a lot of best-in-class experience and knowledge and talent. We also work a lot and collaborate a lot with global funds. There are now 100 plus global interactive media funds with very experienced operators, industry veterans who work very closely with us, who often act as downstream capital for the companies that we back as well. And that is largely part of our of what we bring to the founders. It's more than capital. And you talked about Raja Kadori. Mm-hmm. Raja Kadori is actually part of the Lumikai Leaders Circle, which is our advisory panel. All of them, we not only have Raja Kadori, we've got John Vlosopoulos, who's the CEO of Napster. He used to be previously vice president at Roblox. We have Amarnath Thombre, who used to be the CEO of the Match Group Americas. We have John Bellamy, who's the currently CEO of Jagex. These are global industry experts who we bring and provide access to our founders, and our founders can access them and spend every month talking to some of these industry experts to really understand what it takes to build best-in-class interactive experiences. So, that is what we do to be able to really unlock founders in the ecosystem.
I also want to understand from you, because it's said that the gaming industry historically has feeded a lot into the deep tech industry.
Yeah.
And now that, there's a lot of sentiment in India about deep tech. So how does it connect? How does gaming connect with deep tech? If you can explain that a bit. And also given the context of, let's say, Nvidia, which started out as a gaming company.
Yeah, it's said that if you want to see what innovation will look like in 5 years, see what's happening in the gaming industry today. And if you were to really think about it, gaming is ubiquitous. It is everywhere. And let's, whether it's not just deep tech, but any successful consumer-facing experience is actually a game mechanic in disguise, right? Your chat came from the old school 4chan. Your digital, your likes and badges that are now in Facebook actually came from games, right? Your emojis and sticker packs were very popular in gaming in the 80s and the 90s. That feeling of collaboration, connectivity, that emotional resonance that you want to have your consumer experience with your product, actually the best companies in the world that have solved it have been gaming companies, right? And that's not a surprise, because some of the world's largest consumer companies are led by people who are active gamers, whether it's Mark Zuckerberg, whether it's Reid Hoffman, whether it's Elon Musk. They're self-proclaimed gamers, right? But also, going back to your point on deep tech, there is a very deep connection between at least technology which has been used to propel in a way. For example, Nvidia is a great example. It started off doing very complex 3D computations for games, and now it's become the backbone infrastructure for AI, right? And that's what it was developing for about 2 decades. If you were to look at game engines, Unity powers Hong Kong airport. They do simulations of passenger traffic. Unreal is being used in real estate development projects, right? If you were to see, AR, VR is now being used for virtual try-ons in fashion. If you were to think about movie making, Avatar, The Way of the Water, was actually shot completely in a green room with actors wearing bodysuits and cameras for facial recognition. But, and this beautiful world was constructed out of a game engine, right? So if you were to think about the use cases of just gaming, game tech, and applied game mechanics, in a way, this is a far larger industry than just the $250 billion market that we actually talk about, because its reach is so present in our lives.
So is there an appreciation in India of this, that how important gaming is?
I'd say, if you asked me that question 5 years back, I would have said no. But I just came back from Waves, right? And there is a very deep appreciation now at the highest level. I was at the inauguration where Prime Minister Modi actually singled out the fact that original storytelling, animation, VFX, gaming are actually national priorities, right? There has been the announcement and the establishment of the Indian Institute of Creative Technologies on the same lines as that of the IITs. And this is now being partnered with some of the world's largest institutions like Nvidia, Adobe, Microsoft, Meta, Google are coming together for the creation of this institute, which is going to focus a lot on creative technologies. And I think now there is a lot more policy focus on realizing that this is a massive sunrise sector, and it is also a way of exporting culture, right? It is a way of narrative infrastructure. It's the next vector of cultural export in a way, which I think now there is a lot of policy focus on. And I think a lot of that has come after 4-5 years of evangelizing the market and speaking to policymakers, speaking to the government, and just showcasing what India has to offer.
This is very interesting term you use, narrative infrastructure, and along with that, cultural export. So can you kind of double click a little bit on this? How are there examples how it has been done by different countries?
Of course, look at Korea, where we have K-pop. Right, that's soft power, right? With Japan, it's anime. So we and of course in every culture which has its own nuance, own language, own heritage, the way they have exported their culture and just made it commonplace. Even let's say with China, with a Black Myth Wukong or Genshin Impact, or even now this new concept of microdramas, which are these 60-minute episodes but shot in 1-minute clips, which have really taken the US by storm. That's a way of exporting culture, right? And that kind of cultural export, that kind of narrative infrastructure, I mean, India has so many stories to tell. That has yet to happen, at least on the interactive entertainment side. We've seen the movie industry do that very well, right? Like we've seen the translation of, let's say, Bollywood movies and our Indian film stars being recognized globally. Of course, we have seen, S.S. Rajamouli with his films like Bahubali and RRR translate that to Japan. And, when we spoke with Rajamouli sir last year, he was at our annual event, he talked a lot about how he took authentic stories and the idea was to just build an authentic Indian story. And authentic stories told well, he said, would just translate globally. He said, we didn't adapt it for an foreign audience. We didn't adapt it for a global palette at all. It was just very inherent Indian storytelling. But because the world had seen nothing like it, it was so fresh and it really appealed. Like how many more Viking movies or dragons and, or spy thrillers can we watch? We have to be able to take our culture and export it. And I think there's a lot of now policy focus on that.
Do you think that, we have these great epics in India?
Yes.
And when we read it and when we listen to the stories, they sound very grand.
Yes.
And in a way that Rajamouli has been able to capture a lot of it. Do you think that can also be a great staging for a lot of maybe gaming studios and games?
Absolutely.
And are you seeing that happen?
Absolutely. So we've actually backed a company called Studio Sira. Their first game was called Kurukshetra Ascension. It's a card battler game which is built around the deep lore of the Mahabharata and about all the epic characters. And that has translated well with the global markets. They've now hit 1 million downloads globally. Their average revenue per paying user is about $6, and they're seeing a lot of resonance with players from everybody from Germany to Spain to Cambodia and Philippines, right? So yes, absolutely, we can see that, and we also see that being like we see games transcending boundaries, right? A Black Myth Wukong blew up globally, right? A Genshin Impact blew up globally, right? So that does kind of translate as long as it's a good game, right? The rapper mythology needs to come with a really enjoyable experience and narrative, right? And I think that's where the challenge often arises, where people aren't being able to abstract the mechanics from the narrative, right? And I think that is the big challenge for gaming studios. But our stories are in abundance. There are plenty of stories to be told.
Can you double click a bit on this? Abstract the mechanics from the narrative. So what does it mean? And is it about tech talent? And
it's a lot about it's a couple of things, right? While we see a lot of visions and a lot of excitement, I think there are a couple of things that founders often overlook, right? The first is just really paying a lot of attention to the math, right? What are LTVs look like? What does retention look like? What does player cost look like? That's one. The second is to really understand the craft of designing a game. That's often understated or overlooked. The third is getting player feedback, right? What does the player actually want? What are they looking for? How to kind of adapt your narrative towards the player. And lastly is to not look at Western templates, right? And try and retrofit them. I think that is important, right? You have to build something which is uniquely Indian, but you have to have it at high quality. And I'll go back to S.S. Rajamouli, because that was his example that he gave us, is that I just wanted to build the most extravagant epic experience at the best quality, but in a very Indian way, and that's what I did, right? And of course, he was very persistent and very passionate about his project and the way he builds it, and it reflects in his movies and the way he drives his team and his actors. That kind of passion, that kind of marrying art, craft, and science is what is needed to be able to abstract that, I guess, narrative into the mechanics.
But do we have enough designers, product managers, engineers in gaming in India in a top level who can create those kind of immersive games, very successful immersive games like other countries have done?
It's I'd say happening now, and there are two ways of looking at it. The first is, in India, over the course of the last decade, there have been a lot of gaming companies, media companies, right, which have been set up, right, whether it's been Zynga, whether it's been Ubisoft, whether it's been Electronic Arts, Glue Mobile. This is talent which has been trained best in class at global P&Ls. They have taken companies from small sizes and P&Ls they manage, anywhere between $50 to $100 million P&Ls. That's one crop of entrepreneurs that we're seeing. There's a second crop of entrepreneurs who've actually taken games from seed to exit, whether it's companies like Play Simple or Moonfrog, etc. These are companies, or a ShareChat. These are companies, or Pocket FM, right? Like these are founders who are coming out from these kind of businesses saying, hey, now we want to build. And we have now been trained from seed to scale, and we kind of know how to build. And then there is a third kind of a founder who is, very young, very bold, and who's using a lot of AI, right? And they don't have any kind of technical baggage. They're very first principle thinkers, and they're very oriented towards understand, because they natively understand these experiences because they've grown up playing those experiences or consuming those experiences. And that's the third kind of founder that we back. So I'd say between these three kind of, founder prototypes or personas, there is enough talent that is available in the ecosystem. But of course, they require, because it's a global industry, right? And India is not a walled garden like China, right? We consume American content as well. We consume Korean games as well. And they have about 2-3 decades of product experience and product thinking ahead of us. So Indian founders actually have to play catch up, and they're on a treadmill, right, against those experiences. So it does take time. But I think that kind of is emerging now more and more.
You said this thing that Indian founders, a lot of times they don't understand the math, LTV, retention. So let's say there's a founder somewhere, planning to start a gaming startup. What is the basic math, or what are the basic 4 or 5 principles of this business arithmetic they should kind of keep in mind?
Yeah, I think the first one is that, you have to understand that games are not Dow sports. They are LTV engines, right? Like you have to understand monetization very well.
Can you explain a bit, because so you have DAO and LTV.
Okay, so it's not just about getting users, right? You have to learn how to engage that user, you have to learn how to retain that user, you have to learn how to monetize that user, and then you have to also learn how to distribute your product to the user. It is now no longer about, hey, I'll build this great product and people will flock to it. That's not the case anymore, because your biggest competition in this industry is boredom. Right? Anything and everything competes with you. Reading a book competes with you. Watching Netflix competes with you.
It's the attention.
It's the attention economy. Nor is it an inherent problem that you're solving. Right? A lot of venture capitalists apply this problem solution framework. Are you a vitamin? Are you a painkiller? In entertainment, there are no painkillers. It's all time pass.
Yeah.
Right? So if you were to really have to build in this space, you have to understand the maths of this space. How do you design a beautiful product? Then how do you engage a consumer? How do you retain? How do you build the right retention hooks? How do you distribute it? Right? All of these things have to be thought through. And that is where I mean by, knowing your math as a founder. And in order to do that, you need to pick one kind of genre or one kind of product type, and then just learn very deeply from it. So if you are, let's say, building a racing game, don't say that you're going to build a shooter game the next day, because it doesn't, the expertise required is very different. You're building a audio platform one day, but you want to also do, some creator tools on the side at the other, right? Like it just takes a very different kind of a DNA to be able to do a lot. Or you have unlimited capital, right? So then that sometimes solves things, but not always.
In gaming, are the successful founders mostly those who have maybe had 5-10 years of industry experience and then come into build their own thing? Or because it seems intuitively that we don't see a lot of these dorm room successes.
It can be. I'd say yes, you require expertise. I think more importantly is you need to know what excellence looks like to be able to build great gaming products and great at least interactive media products. But yes, I'd say there is a crop of founders who are very tenacious, very persistent, who, just through trial and error and being very, very frugal, and who have, great curiosity, have this really intuitive ability to listen to their consumer and actually embody that in their product, that also does well. And we've seen that, right? Like, for example, we have a company in our portfolio called DevTouch. It's these, they've two guys, they've never been trained in game design, and they now have India's number 2 most popular cricket game called Kings of Cricket. They have nearly 200,000 daily active users on their platform. They've built a game which is published in India with a best-in-class ad stack and user acquisition platform, right? So that they learned completely through trial and error and on the job, just being very frugal. It's a very small team of just 9 people, and they're just constantly learning, and they're learning machines, and they're just very, very deeply passionate and persistent, right? So yes, we see that also. So I think it's a combination of both.
So what should a founder starting out, in this sector aim to build at this point? Which are the best areas or kind of segments to build in?
I'd say definitely start looking at the India market. I think a lot of people look at the global market and, try and build a lot of clones of what already exists. But I'd say, tell Indian stories and build genre expertise. Be brutally focused on your retention and engagement and monetization. Build for India, from India. As long as you build world-class experiences, no matter what the cultural palette is, it will do well, especially in interactive media and entertainment, because this translates and it transcends boundaries, right? And we see that. We see that in film. We see that in television. Why would we not see it in interactive media and entertainment?
I think this is a big kind of maybe a disadvantage that, in media, that you have to compete with global players. So it's not good enough to be the best in India. When everybody, Netflix, if you are Bollywood, Netflix is also competing.
Yes, absolutely. That's right. But that's what makes this industry very exciting, and it makes it, possible because there's so much value. It's so hard. That means that there is so much value to be captured. Right? And if you think about the evolution of media, right, we've gone from the television screen being a family screen to your personalized mobile screen. I mean, the next 10 years of media is going to look very different from the last 10 years, right? So if you're a founder starting out today, I will tell you that there are lots of stories to be told. The world is ready to play, but what stories are you going to tell, right? That's what you have to figure out.
And because in the waves, there was this focus on narratives.
Yes.
I don't understand, because games, like you said, okay, a lot of people play games now, even elderly people or older kind of cohorts of people. But generally, it's the children who play a lot of games, right? So how important do you think is that India develops its own games so that the storytelling, the narrative setting, and that narrative infrastructure is Indian, so that we can retain the kind of strength of telling the stories our way, or what we want children to learn?
So I think I think everybody plays games, right? If you were to look around you, whether in an airport, just in a terminal, right? Like if you were to look around you, you'd see people do two things on their phones. You'll see them either playing games or you're seeing them watch video content, right? So it's not just about children, right? I like to think about it like, everybody watches movies. We don't say you're a movieer, right? Everybody plays games. I don't know why we need the label of it being a gamer. I think one has to think of it from that sense, right? Yes, there are stories that will appeal and experiences that will appeal to children, but there are stories and experiences that will appeal to male audiences, to female audiences, to older audiences. Like there are the older audiences who play solitaire and Ludo, right?
Even they are gamers.
It's
not like you have to have a headset. And
You don't need to. And anyway, 99% of India's audience plays games on their mobile phones, right? So it's this complete mismatch of who identifies as a gamer, right? Like you'll typically see women playing games, but if you ask them कि आप games खेलते हो, तो they're like कि नहीं हम games नहीं खेलते, but उनके phone पे Candy Crush they'll be at level 97, right? There's a lot of that. और कि आप Ludo खेलते हो. So there is a lot of that kind of experience which are very untapped. So what kind of stories you want to tell it's a complete white space for founders, right? How do you build those? And if you think about it, if when you think about your entertainment choices, sometimes you want to watch a spy thriller, but sometimes you want to watch a comedy. Sometimes you want to watch a drama. Sometimes you want to watch a family soap, right? Your palette in entertainment is so wide and so diverse, right? You don't say that I am only an action movie person, right? You consume all sorts of entertainment. And that is the important lens to keep in mind.
Now, the biggest thing is AI.
Yes.
So how will AI impact the gaming sector? Because like studios, you would have seen a few weeks back what happened with Ghibli.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So I think there is this concern that when you create or invest in innovation in media, but it gets commoditized by AI. So
yes.
What is the thinking within the gaming sector about this?
So a lot of our companies are using AI, but it's an accelerant, I would say. A lot of our companies are using AI in, let's say, production, or to help essentially unlock creative work. So using it for marketing, in user acquisition, in quality assurance, in bug testing, etc. Right? And yes, to a large extent with AI, weak content will get commoditized. Right? So when the cost of content creation or the friction towards creating content will reduce, the quality of content will also go down, right? But that's where really great content can set itself aside, right? That's where creativity and originality really has to stand out. Now, I like to think about it the way that, when you have food, AI can make the food, but you will still crave your grandmother's recipe, right? You will still want that particular kind of touch, right? No matter how well AI may cook it, right? So that is the lens in which you have to think about making consumer experiences, right? It is about providing that extra, because if AI can do it, then 20 other people can also create it. What is that extra experience or that accelerant that you can use to unlock creativity and originality? That's where the winner lies.
Within animation, I think a lot of animation for the global markets is being done out of India.
Yes, that's today. Right. That's right.
Are you seeing any impact there, on jobs, on animation jobs, design jobs?
Well, we saw Technicolor shut down in India, but I don't believe it was for AI reasons. But yes, nearly 60% of animation work globally happens out of India. But that happens to a lot of fragmented shops and a lot of small outfits. But there is an opportunity to use AI to augment the animation pipeline, to make it cheaper, to make it less manual, to make it less cumbersome. And that's very interesting for us to see, right? Is that how can, again, AI act as almost an accelerant to translate a creator's vision into these beautiful experiences, but do it at a less cost and a less time, right? Like if it took, if let's say it takes $70 million to make a certain movie, can you do it in $10 million, right? That would be a game changer, right? Would S.S. Rajamouli, it takes him 3 years to make a film, can it be done in 1 year, right? Can you accelerate a visionary filmmaker like him? And I think those are kind of interesting questions for us that we'd like to get answered.
One last thing. So AI, how do you think net, what will be the impact on the Indian gaming industry? Will it, there was this one trajectory that it has been growing. Now, will it accelerate, or will it be something that will be negative net and we have to overcome it?
I think, we have to definitely use it to our advantage. I think, otherwise the delta between global companies using AI and Indian companies not using AI will start to expand. It will start to show, right? You will be slower, you will be less efficient, it will be more expensive. So yes, Indian companies have to now build expertise in AI. There is no question about it. I think AI sovereignty will become a very big thing going forward, where now the government is putting efforts into Sarvam. Of course, we've seen that with DeepSeek. The US has OpenAI. We see Europe also now starting to set up guardrails around AI regulation. So yes, I'd say Indian companies have to now start embracing AI in a way which is smart, which is efficient, which can keep them at pace with global companies. Absolutely. And I think from a government standpoint, there is definitely focus on AI upskilling as well. And a lot of it is just, there are no AI experts because the industry is so new. A lot of it is just self-teaching and learning, right? All of us have to upskill, in a way.
So on that note, that all of us have to upskill in the age of AI, and so will the gaming sector. Thank you so much, Salone, for your time. It was great to chat with you, and hope we can again sit down another day and take the conversation forward.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all the great questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.